Good evening. My name is Natalie, and I am the programs coordinator at The Collaborative, a small nonprofit located in Londonderry, Vermont, whose mission is to promote the development of a healthy and involved community supporting substance-free youth. We are grateful to have Benjamin Lerner present as part of the 2020-2021 Refuse to Use program, which endeavors to provide our community with meaningful substance misuse and asset-building educational opportunities in an effort to help support youth in their journey to live healthy and fulfilled lives. This work of prevention is not easy, and it was with the support of people like you, caring adults, community partners, preventionists, treatment specialists, members of the recovery community, teachers, scholars, etc., that we are able to do the hard work that it takes to provide substance use prevention education in Southern Vermont. We all have a part to play in supporting youth in our communities, and we are humbled to play our part. And we are humbled by your support. Together we are stronger, and we thank you for being here. It is my distinct honor to welcome Benjamin Lerner, a person living in long-term recovery from a substance misuse disorder, and just an all-around great human being. This is the final event of the Refuse to Use season. It is always an honor to hear from members of the recovery community. They have our utmost respect. Benjamin Lerner is the great-grandson of Irving Berlin. He started writing poetry at the age of 8 and playing piano at the age of 9. A prodigy, by 14, Benjamin was playing full classical concerts, and he also fell in love with rap music. However, the pressure of living up to the expectations of his family's musical legacy proved too much for him. Benjamin began using drugs and alcohol as a means of self-medication. In his early teens, it was limited to binge drinking and habitual marijuana use. However, at age 20, Benjamin was prescribed oxycodone for dental surgery and became addicted. Within 2 years, his opiate addiction had progressed into a full-fledged IV heroin and crack cocaine addiction. After multiple stints in rehab and years of on-again, off-again maintenance medications, Benjamin sought help for his addiction in June of 2016, and he has been sober ever since. Benjamin credits his continued success in recovery to his ability to express emotions relating to his struggle through word and song. He has developed a new hybrid genre, combining rap and classical piano. He creates all new piano compositions rooted in classical music theory, and we will hear some of those compositions tonight, and simultaneously raps over them, journaling his experience with addiction in life and sobriety. He's an incredibly talented writer and writes a weekly column for the Vermont News Guide. His first full album, Clean, was released in February of 2020, a year ago. And Benjamin hopes that by sharing his story, others struggling with addiction will find hope and help. He feels it is never too late to find one's true self. Benjamin's great-grandfather created a vision of hope in the 20th century through his music. And similarly, Benjamin hopes that by sharing his personal journey through this new hybrid of rap and classical music, he can bring hope to others who are struggling. Now, we wanted this presentation of music tonight to be of the highest quality, so it is pre-recorded, but especially and specifically for this event. Now, before Benjamin begins to share, we are going to be starting off by showcasing one of Benjamin's compositions, Dan and Dave, the music video, which, as a note, contains explicit language and material, but we feel it is important to allow those who are brave enough to share their stories the artistic liberty to share the truth, however raw that may be. Substance dependency and addiction has touched every single one of us in one way or another. Either you have struggled, you know someone who has struggled, or you are out there fighting the good fight to help prevent and address this insidious and pervasive disease of mind, body, and soul. Together, we can all make a difference, and we are so grateful to be joined by a difference maker who is going to be presenting tonight. So right now, I'm going to play for you, Dan and Dave.
Tell you a story about Dan and Dave, couple kids who knew each other and the similar paths they take. Only minor distinct differences separate two people who from outside would seem the same in every way. Dan was a rebel, raised in an environment where people had so much money, ain't worried about retirement. Palatial mansions, cars outside were fancy. His family adopted him, he was really the plan B. He grew up in a suburb with some other kids and never knew till he was older what his real father and mother did. He played soccer and his skills were way proper, but had a chip on his shoulder, started to blaze ganja. Didn't need the money, but he started selling it, cause drugs will give you power and respect, and so he relished it. Charismatic, magnetism, despair, he had it, but always had a grim aura as if aware a tragic circumstance awaited him. Real cautious and pessimistic, he always moved as if knowing he had his chance and missed it. And that's what Dave enters the picture, skinny and insecure, an introvert who's thrown into the mixture. His clothes were funny, the older kids laughed at him, wanted acceptance and started blowing cash rapid, stealing money from his family, acting out, using drugs and drinking. It started out with grams of weed, and at the parties where him and Dan would be, Dan saw Dave and realized he could hustle him handily. He made it come off like a friendship, and Dave was gullible. Soon he found himself faded and gone entrenched in a way of life he didn't really understand, but he wanted approval from the older kids being a younger man, so got some ounces as a front from Dan, but didn't hustle with the same tenacity and then fucked up the bands. Dan would brag about ripping them off with all his friends. They would all laugh, snicker and scoff like, "You really fronted Dave another zip of that bomb? Then he took 2 weeks to flip it, must have did something wrong." And they were right, Dave would take that shit and blaze every night, cause the demons in his head were way too crazy to fight. And Dan graduated, moved away, leaving Dave a marijuana addict, trapped inside a sad traumatic loopy haze. But in his absence Dave improved his game and started hustling and stopped going to classes thinking school was lame. Somehow graduated too and stayed with just the weed and liquor for a sec, but then moved on to blues and yay. And then in college it got crazier still. Wasn't long till Dave was hooked on the cocaine and the pills. Dan started selling perks, so Dave copped them from Dan, who moved back home supplying Dave with his Dilatas and Xans. Oxycontin caused Dave problems, but Dan didn't mind, cause while Dave was getting worse, Dan was managing fine. But when Dave left for rehab, wasn't his time, wasn't ready to give up what he discovered his mind needed to quiet down. He wasn't sober too long, stepped it up to heroin, then a hopelessly strong craving came on. That's when Dan came back in his life as a private school junkie, slanging smack in the white. And Dave would steal his mom's car and money out of her purse to go to Dan's house, buy some dope and powder and perks. Used to sneak it through the window on those dark cold nights in a suburban mansion basement in some dark low light. They used text message codes case cops found the phones. When Dan went to rehab, Dave was alone. And then when Dan got sober for a minute for real, Dave was dope sick, struggled for a fix and a pill. Started going up to Baltimore, up on his own. Cop scrambled from the block, far away from his home. But then one day a rolled up dollar just ain't do the trick, and one of Dave's homies told him it was better to stick a needle up inside his arm. Dave thought, what's the harm? When he pushed the plunger down, fell in love with the charm. Instantly he started spiraling downward so much faster. But Dan had moved away and became aware of his past, and for the first time in his life he met his real family. Left his adopted parents who considered him the plan B, whom he had disappointed with his drugs and his ways. He was down with his new family for a number of days. David moved on from Dan as the source for his dope, started smoking crack, losing weight, lost all control. His family gave up, he was crazy as fuck. Dan was on and off the needle, landscaping with trucks, trying to earn an honest buck, but that shit didn't last. Couldn't keep himself from hustling and forget about the past. So when Dave finally did his second stint in rehab, Dan came back to town again and started getting some cash. Found a girl who had connections to some real raw shit, supplying those who needed coke and dope they speedball fix. He would always try to flip it fast and re-up quick, but the clientele wasn't steady, Dan would need more chips. At this time Dave had been sober for over a year, had a steady job, faced his inner soul and his fears. Dan was broker than a joke, heard that Dave had some cash and tried to tempt him with some heroin he had in his stash. And Dave said, can't buy dope, I ain't gonna lie, living different now homie, been clean for a while. I hope life is treating you better than it did in the past, but if you're trying to sell me smack, I can't give you no cash. But Dan was desperate, he needed money, had to stack it, and so he told Dave he'd sell him a North Face jacket. And Dave said forget it, this shit is just pathetic. But Dan talked him into it and he knew that he'd regret it. But he got in Dan's car, Dan drove him around, reminisced about the days when they were smoking it down, when he used to cop Oxy 30s and coke in the brown through basement windows in his house. But Dave was over it now. Dave bought the jacket out of pity for this miserable man who used to seem so charismatic with the zips in his hand, who now was broken down on his luck, who didn't command that magnetism that he once did, who accomplish all his plans. Dave didn't know it, but he would never see him again, cause Dan would end up being sentenced in the federal pen. A while later, Dave's homie hit him up on a text and told him there had been a crazy and momentous event. Dan had been arrested for spiking his dope with some fent and selling it to kids who overdosed, and though he ain't meant to kill the kids, Dave was overwhelmed and couldn't believe the kid in high school who sold him all his coke and his weed, then sold him dope, sold him oxys in his lonely disease, was doing hard time resulting from his hopeless ass greed. I tell you this story now for just one reason alone. In an alternate universe, it would be me who'd be gone from shooting fentanyl laced dope, casualty of the game. Every single day is precious, don't take it in vain. If you ain't figure it out, my friend is Dan and I'm Dave. Story true as it can be, only the names have been changed. I don't do this to embarrass or disgracefully shame. Former friend of mine to point out the mistakes that he made. I do this shit so other addicts who are escaping their pain don't end up rotting in a cell or be a name on a grave.
My name is Benjamin Lerner, and I just wanted to thank everyone for being here this evening. I'm a recovering addict, alcoholic, and everything in between. And before I share anything with anyone, I just want to take a moment, think about my past, think about my present, think about my future, and really just commit to telling the raw and varnished and honest truth. Because that's really all I can do in my position, is give y'all how it was, what happened, and what it was like now. And I want to say first that I was an alcoholic and an addict before I ever took my first drink. And what I mean by that is I was always seeking out instant gratification to take myself away from who I was. I didn't think I was strong enough. I didn't think I was beautiful enough. I didn't think I was intelligent enough. I didn't think I was creative enough, you name it. My insecurities manifested when I was 3 years old, the first time I had an organized thought. And at first I would try to escape my thoughts in video games, Pokemon cards. I'm gonna age myself right there. I'm a millennial, so when I was growing up, we had the PS1, N64 and all that. And I would go into these fantasy worlds to kind of escape from these anxious thoughts that I had. And growing up, I grew up in a family of privilege. I like to say we didn't own the shopping mall, but we sure as hell shopped there. And, my parents were wonderful people, and I didn't really want for anything. But there was always an inherent sense that, I was part of something bigger than myself. And, there was a little pressure growing up. I come from a family of established writers, authors, poets, musicians, journalists. But bigger than any status or any name or anything that can come with that, I just saw the people around me kind of being intellectually enmeshed in this culture, and I wanted to be part of it. And, I have friends who have parents who are big into sports or big businessmen, big lawyers who just own a business, and they can relate to it, just wanting to kind of, carry that tradition forward. And I wanted to do that with my family. So I internalized the pressure I felt outside of myself, and I magnified it inside myself by a factor of 100. And so I got addicted to approval. It wasn't just the video games and the Pokemon cards. It was the approval from other people. And I fiended for it before I ever touched a substance, knowing what it did. And I want to say that because the first time I ever did touch a drink or did touch a drug, I was 13 years old, 14 years old, and I had a sip of wine, sip of beer before that, but I don't count that because I didn't know what it did. The first real drink I ever think I really had was when I knew what it was going to do, and I knowingly chose to partake in that action. And I was 13 years old, and I was at my friend's house in the basement, and we were bored. It could start as innocent as that. And we were just curious. And he partied a little bit in high school, but he didn't grow up to be like me. He walked through the same door I did, but he didn't stay at the party, if that makes sense. But from the very first moment that I drank that disgusting, cobwebbed, lukewarm, past its prime beer that I thought I was so cool for drinking, it was just this like transcendental bliss that I experienced. And it was like nothing I had ever felt before, because I didn't think I was strong enough to face my life, to face the people around me. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I was resilient enough. But in that moment, it all evaporated. I thought I had found my solution. And for a little while, it worked. It didn't make me more courageous. It just made me forget my fear. It didn't make me better looking. It just made me look in the mirror and forget the perceived flaws I thought I had. It didn't make me more talented. It just made me see that, maybe I was overanalyzing the fact that I wasn't talented in the first place. And so instead of running towards the solution in the beginning, instead of actually confronting my problems, I used this poisonous elixir that I had in my hand to run away from them, because I didn't think I was strong enough. And to be honest, I didn't really want to find out. I didn't want to find out if I was strong enough because I was afraid. And that same fear I had of not being good enough manifested in so many ways. And I used drugs as a social lubricant. I mean, it started out pretty suburban, you know. It would be like, you know, I'd get too drunk and I'd fail a test, or I'd mess up at a track meet. And growing up, my discipline was piano playing, and I would do really badly at a judging. But, you know, I somehow pulled it together, because even in the early stages of my addiction, I was super manipulative, and I knew how to charm the people around me to get what I wanted. That was a skill I developed, because the further I got away from my true soul and my true self, and the more I used drugs to, like, you know, get away from my fears and my fear that I wasn't good enough and my fear that I wasn't strong enough, I developed a different set of skills than I would have if I had just confronted my problems. And those skills were manipulation, lying, and extorting the people around me emotionally and materially to get whatever I needed. And so I managed to graduate school, and I went down to University of Miami. And I don't know if y'all have ever been to Miami, but it is certainly not a place that a budding marijuana addict and alcoholic should be. And I had every opportunity to pursue my dreams. I got in somehow by the skin of my teeth to a business and music program, dual major, but I just wanted to party. And, you know, I got arrested down there, and, you know, did a little diversion program. I got out of it, but I thought I was slick for getting out of that consequence. I really did. And so instead of actually, you know, like confronting my problem, getting sober, I just dropped out, because I'm like, they're not going to let me use the way that I want. And so I proceeded to abuse my family's trust, drain their bank accounts. And the sad thing was, full disclosure, and I know she's watching this right now, but my mother is one of the reasons I'm alive and here today. She was just getting sober at this point. She has 9 years sober, and I grant, you know, she really did a lot for me. And that's incredible. I'm blessed to have a family member in recovery, but at the time she was just getting sober. And so I can't imagine what it was like, me stealing her car, stealing her money, driving around the country. And I thought I was invincible, because even though in the bottom of it, I was still afraid to confront my fears, you know, the alcohol, the marijuana, and by then the cocaine, ecstasy. I'm not going to drug-a-log too much, but, you know, all of those poisonous adulterant chemicals I was putting in my system made me feel like I was Superman, for lack of a better word, until I wasn't invincible anymore, you know. It was one night I was getting drunk up in Philadelphia with my friends, pretending that I was still in college, because I had dropped out of college, but in my mind I had warped it so that I had the status of my friends who were in college, but I also had the status of being like, you know, the bad boy, like, you know, rapper, stealing my mom's car. And that's not badass. I mean, come on, you're not doing anything if you're stealing money out of your mom's wallet and stealing her car. But I thought I was, because I had, like, you know, I had stripped myself so much of my inhibitions to a way that I could no longer recognize who I was. And I crashed my car that night. But I didn't stop drinking. I didn't care that my family was frightened. I didn't care that my mom thought I was going to lose my life. All I cared about was, when I was sitting in those handcuffs, I'm not going to be able to drink today if they keep me in jail. I'm not going to be able to use. I didn't care about anybody but me. I didn't care about anybody's feelings. I just cared about me. And so, you know, I stopped drinking. I managed my consequences. I went to school. I switched my schools. I went out to California. My dad was staying out there because my parents had gotten divorced. I wanted to reconnect with him. And I thought, you know, I'm going to stop drinking, but I'm not going to stop smoking. I'm going to grow my hair out, you know, move out to California, do that whole thing. Because I did what's called a geographic. I thought that I could change my life by changing my surroundings, but that wasn't really the case. And something happened at that point, which is that kind of first aha moment I talked about with alcohol. See, I thought I found my solution with alcohol and then with marijuana, but I got prescribed painkillers when I had some surgery out there. And, you know, I don't mean to talk about drugs specifically too much, but there's too many people dying from this epidemic. I have to mention, I have to be real. And I got prescribed Percocets, and there were no controls. This was the very beginning of the opioid epidemic in early 2012. And, you know, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Within 2 years, it had gone from popping Percocets and going down to the open air drug market to buy pills to I was sitting passed out in my bed with a needle in my arm and a crack pipe. And I still thought that I was doing okay. You know, I still thought that my solution worked, because I justified it by, like, I'm not willing to confront my fears, and really my family should be willing to let me do this. I thought that I was doing them a favor. Do you have any idea how scared I am? Do you have any idea how terrified I am of not being good enough, of not being able to face my life? And through this medication and my solution, every time they sent me to rehab, I thought, you are denying me this solution. I resented them because I didn't think that I had the strength to cope with what was underneath. And so I'm out there, you know. I'm out in the Tenderloin, this, you know, trap houses out in San Francisco, you know, blowing crack smoke out, track marks on my arms, you know, pennies in my pocket trying to pay crack dealers with them. And I came from, classical piano concerts. I came from a beautiful life. So how did I get here? But I still wasn't ready. But then one day it happened. My solution stopped working. I had all the money I needed to buy all the drugs I wanted. But I was up in this crack house. I had come back to New York, and then we went from the crack house to this motel out in New Jersey. And I had all the drugs I wanted, but I didn't get high. I just didn't. I got physically high. You can't not get physically high with that amount of drugs in your system. But I didn't get spiritually high. And I had been to rehab several times before, in and out, just to make my family happy. But I was finally at the place where I was willing to maybe think that there was a way that I could learn from my mistakes and run towards the solution. And there was a voice that was 10 times stronger than that, telling me to just pick that needle back up, pick that joint back up, pick that drink back up, any form it came in, it didn't matter. But I was ready, so I listened. And I didn't have to go through all that, but for me, it took me that much to be ready. But on my album Clean, it talks about that in some of the songs. The album is structured to tell, the story of my life. And so the first couple tracks, including Dan and Dave, which you just saw, it's all about the downward descent into addiction and the pressure I felt growing up. But in the middle of the album, there's 3 songs, Alive When I Die, Broken, and Never Let It Go, that talk about what it was like when I finally was ready to run towards that light and accept that maybe it was time for me to confront my problems and run towards the truth. So I'm going to turn it back over to Natalie, and I'm going to let her play this suite of 3 songs for y'all. Again, this is off of my album Clean, and it's Alive When I Die, Broken, and Never Let It Go. Take it away.
Like I already died in my mind. I'm through with living, I just want to get high. I can't even look my mom in her eyes. Now my friends all say I constantly lie. What's the point of even wanting to try? I'm just trying to survive, feeling like I gotta constantly hide. But when the needle hits my vein, I'm alive. Talk to God and he's kind. All the levels of my conscience align. Take the pain and push it all to the side. There's a comfort and pause where all the misery and suffering dissolves. Makes me feel like there ain't nothing that's wrong. I can live with myself. I can bathe in self-forgiveness and melt. Forget about how I've been lately stuck living in hell. Forget about the tears my family cries. Forget about the dirty, hopeless way I'm living that they have to deny. Forget about all of my cash and my pride, how they both are gone. I don't think it really matters after I die. Everything is a game. Today I had to cop a fix in the rain. Had to give my dealer nickels and change. He looked at me like a snitch in the lane. Went home, boiled the water, dropped the cotton in the mixture and strained. Took me 20 minutes hitting my vein. Pawned my phone, got some more money. Then I went and did it again. I've been stuck in a loop. I don't ever want to deal with the truth. I don't want to feel what feelings can do. I just want to feel the peace and the quiet. I don't want to desire. I just really want to sleep and be tired. I only ever feel alive when I'm high. So if getting high is killing me, I only feel alive when I die. I was cooking crack cocaine just to mask my pain. But now I start to feel an actual change when I was digging with a spike in my arm. Even though when blood would register, it felt a little light, little warm. I didn't feel I was enlightened through God. Didn't get the spiritual sense of relief I used to find way before. My nose was stuffed up. My sinus hurt from tears that I swallowed. Barely slept at all that night, stuck in fear of tomorrow. I woke up and thought that last night was only a fluke. I prepped a fresh rig and I shot 2 bags of dope up for proof. And when I pushed that plunger down, I had some hope it would do what it had done before, make me feel my soul was renewed. That's when I knew it didn't do the trick anymore. I almost lost it in the motel, almost kicked in the door, and then I broke down. I thought, how am I gonna cope now? I'm scared of getting clean, but I don't get high off of dope now. But I'm too scared to cop me a pistol and even blow out my brain that maybe now there's finally no excuse to hold out. So I called the treatment center, said I wanted to go. I ain't gonna flex like I was ready, wasn't ready for show. The truth is I ain't never think that getting sober would work. But I was tired of lying, screwing people over with words, just to cop some crack or bars or coke or dope or some perks. Started to think of all my family I knowingly hurt. Left my home, drove 2 hours. On the road I was there, searching for something that could get me through my broken despair. Feeling like my soul's missing, skin crawling, bones itching, legs shaking and my toes twitching, sweating bullets and it's cold dripping. Feels like it's been about 3-4 days, every 3-4 minutes. Feeling drained and my eyes heavy, but my heart is racing, I'm beyond restless. Stomach's turning every 5 seconds. Time stands still, mind can't chill even for a minute. Nerve and it's coming back to life, tell you how it feel. Every sense at once, coming back from numb. Heart beating fast, pounding like a drum. Finally feel like I ain't gotta run. I accept my fate, take it as it comes. Sensitive to light, eyes tearing up, sneezing like I got an allergy to dust. Doubled over like I'm limping with a crutch. Seconds turn to hours, hours turn to months. I ain't eating none, breakfast, dinner, lunch, skipping every one. Barely even slept, feeling faint and light. I feel short of breath, coming back to life. Feeling like I'm dead, feeling like a mile every step. Onward though I press, nothing left. I lost everything I never thought I'd lose. Everything to gain, everything to prove. I feel like I'm lost and exhausted, disoriented and confused. Guess I finally gotta pay the cost and satisfy my debts and settle on my dues. Taking every ounce of strength I have to get up out my bed, get across the room, flick the light, splash some water on my face. This is something that I never thought I'd do. I still feel afraid, but I feel the weight shifting off my shoulders. Now I start to face every single doubt, every single fear. Finally aware, everything is clear. Here and now, seeing how weakness now turns into strength. Voices in my head speak aloud, I ain't listening to them. Broken down, but I know I got a chance to build it up again. This my chance at a new beginning. I'm deciding how it ends. Pain motivates, ain't gonna wait. Ain't no debate, make no mistake. Gas never breaks, can't hesitate. Present, future, and the past separate. Lonely and I'm cold, sober and alone. Far away from home and everything I know. I'ma take the way I feel right now, remember it, and I'ma never let it go. I'ma never let it go. I'ma never let it go. I'ma never let it go.
Yeah, so after I had taken that time to go to treatment and recenter myself and refocus myself, you know, a lot of people think that treatment ends at the treatment center. And one of my primary objectives in my recovery advocacy is to let people know that this is a lifelong struggle. And as I mentioned before, you know, before I ever had that drink in me, before I ever had that drug in me, I was an addict and alcoholic in terms of my behavior patterns. And they manifested from the moment I got sober in different ways that I still had to confront even when the drugs were out of my system. Because see, my fear of not getting high went away after I went through the worst detox of my life. And I'm not going to get into those details. Suffice to say that it's not something I would wish on my worst mortal enemy. I mean, heroin detox is not a game. Worst flu you've ever got times 10. And so I'm waking up in rehab and I'm going to meetings, you know, in the center, but I'm going. But the thing I was addicted to before drugs was approval, right? And I mentioned that before. And so I made a big mistake, but I'm going to call myself on it because this is real and I got to keep it real. I got into a lot of people say you shouldn't get in a relationship within the first year of recovery. I waited about 4 days and it was with another person who was in the treatment center. And I had finally gotten clean, finally gotten my act together. But I was ready to throw it all away because of some little like soap opera rumor that someone started that made this girl that I knew in treatment not want to talk to me. And so here I am. I've just gotten sober. I've done, in a lot of ways, the hardest part. But I'm sitting in this room because I've manipulated my family again to like get me out of this place. Because just like I didn't want to deal with the drug detox, I didn't want to deal with any emotional problems that could come from being sober and finally having to confront the emotions I was so scared of all along. And I mean, it was kind of like a really big like fable or allegory. I get sober to run away from these emotions and I finally get a connection and then it gets ripped away from me immediately because of my own idiocy getting involved in it in the first place when I'm so vulnerable, but I'm still headstrong even though I'm sober. So I'm sitting in this room And there's this treatment counselor there. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to another rehab center. Really, I'm just going to go get high. Cause that's what I do. You know, I'm an addict and I don't have my program figured out yet. So I'm telling them I'm going to take a train back home, go to a outpatient rehab. No, I'm not going to do any of that. I'm going to go get high and do all that. But I was just looking at myself in the mirror and something finally hit me that it's going to be easier if you move towards it than if you run. Because I was running the tape of what it was going to be like if I went to, because the treatment center was in Pennsylvania, and I was going to take a cab from, you know, central PA to Philly and then like take a train down, but really I was going to go use. And I just thought about that and being homeless on the street just to keep running. And I was like, it's going to be easier if I run towards it. So I stayed. And not everything has been easy. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that, you know, confronting your problems on a daily basis is easy, because it's not. Because when I got back, you know, my family discovered a cache of drug paraphernalia, and my mom's in this, so she's gonna know about that. I'm telling the truth on that. And because of what they saw, I told them about the depths of my addiction. But when you see it in person, and I know people will relate to, when you see the effect that, like, you know, drugs and drink have taken on someone in person, like physically expressed, it's a different effect. So they had unintentionally enabled me for a long time due to my lies and my irresponsibility, but they cut me off. And thank God they did. Because I'd lived a life of privilege, and it made me get a job, and it gave me a new privilege, and it didn't come with a dollar sign on it, and it didn't come with a fancy student apartment that I shot dope in. It came with the privilege of having to build my life back up from nothing, because I had never truly had nothing, and I had never truly had to feel what it was like to go out in a bus when it was raining outside, and I had, like, you know, 5 cents after the bus fare left in my pocket to get refused from job after job. Because when I came out of treatment, I went through a second adolescence, and my skin still ain't that great now, but it was like, you know, big pimples. I was so self-conscious, and I was 24 years old, about to be 25. I hadn't finished school. All these consequences are coming back to haunt me, and I'm applying to places like, you know, Starbucks and McDonald's, and my friends are like graduating from law school, getting into law firms, and here I am just trying to scrape together enough money for like a McChicken that I can eat while I'm applying to do this job. But, you know, I started to relish it. I started to really enjoy the sensation. I'm not going to say high. I'm going to say the clarity that I got from knowing that the struggle wasn't the essence of what I was searching for in itself. Because I used to get high off of detachment. But really, it was more kind of this lucid, stimulating feeling I got. Because every time, even though I got turned down, it was like something I could learn from. And every time that, like, you know, I went to a restaurant and they told me no, like, I resented it. But at the same time, that feeling of resentment, you know, like, powered me forward to the point that I could let go of it later down the line. But it got me through it. I'm not going to lie. I used that, you know, self-conscious anxiety that I used to medicate to try to get away from to move forward. And I made my fear and my anger and my pain the very resilience that I was seeking to build up with the drugs that ended up stripping it away from me. And, you know, after a while, it did work. In the place I last expected it, I applied to a restaurant that was super fancy. And here I am with my zits. And, you know, I'm still chain smoking cigarettes at the time, even though I'm sober and smelling like smoke. And the manager can smell the nervousness on me even more than the nicotine. But I'm going in there and he's just like, he's this, you know, this gravelly voiced French guy. Well, why do you want the job? And it's because it's a French restaurant. And I tell him, I said, you know, I wanted to lie, but I said, I'm working on getting my mental health back together. I had to drop out of school to do it. I promise you one thing, though. If you hire me, I will show up earlier than anybody else. I will leave later than anybody else. And I will work harder than anybody else, because I was hungry. And, you know, within 2 years of being sober, I went through a lot of things. I went through a lot of other silly relationships and heartbreaks. I went through medical emergencies in my family. I went from being a busboy at that restaurant to a waiter to a bartender. And the most beautiful thing of all happened. My dad gave me this house in Vermont. You might be wondering why a guy with a Southern accent is doing up here spitting hip hop poetry with a New York style up in Vermont. But I've been coming up here since I was a kid in Sandgate. Let me tell you, that serenity I experienced when I stepped out of that car for the first time in Vermont, coming up here, it was beautiful. And so, you know, I started working as a waiter, then a bartender, then I started working at treatment centers and, you know, spitting the message, just like the rhymes that I got back into spitting. And I started channeling my recovery into my poetry and combining my love of classical piano and all that together. And I actually met the owner of the studio that I'm sitting in right now. And it was a beautiful thing, because 5 miles down from my house, there was someone who owned a beautiful studio and got my message. But I'm going to say something. And I was coming up here and I was finally doing my dream. I thought I'd have to give up my music. But the disease doesn't stop. And so all these great things are happening in my life. But literally 2 days after the second session I do up here, where I've just, you know, put my first song on recording, put my first song towards this album. I've got all these great things in the works. And I go on Facebook and I see my friend's passed away. And he was a guy I went to treatment with. And just 2 days ago, he had told me he wanted to get back in because he had relapsed. And I gotta tell y'all, that made me like cry like I hadn't in years. Because I had lost people, but not someone I hadn't talked to like 1.5 days ago. And I started doubting myself, and I started thinking, this is all for nothing. What is it if my friends can't get past it? But sometimes it feels like I'm the only one left. But even with that, I know that just being the only one, I can channel what I've learned and what I have experienced in this program towards helping someone else. And that's the beautiful thing about recovery. Whether you're a recovering addict or not, you should know this. Your experience, your strength, and your hope from the struggles you have been through can help the next person. And so that's what I hope to do when I recorded this song. And there's a couple songs on the album. One's called I Couldn't Save Him. The other's called Only One Left. So if it's all right with you, Natalie, I'd like to transition to playing this song about what it was like when I lost my friends. This is Only One Left.
Yeah, so when I was 27, half of my homies were already dead. I lost a whole lot of friends, I'm 27 and half of my homies are dead. Some of them locked in the feds, some of them got sober, relapsed and had to start over again. Feel like the only one left, maybe it all was a dream. Maybe I never got clean, maybe I died no deed. Way back when I was a fiend, I had to wake up and scheme. I had to make me some green, I had to do what I had to do. That means I did anything. I had to steal from my friends, I had to lie to my fam. That's just supply and demand. I had to cook up a plan, so I could cook up a gram. So I could shoot up again, so I could stop all the pain, so I could quiet the voices inside of my head, so I could lie to myself, so I didn't have to change. People who knew me back then, who look at me now, tell me that I ain't the same, tell me that I should be proud. They knew me when I was down, they say how far that I came. Lately I've been out of town, lately I've been out of range. I've been busy making moves, I've been busy getting paid. People talking down my name, I got some people I know got resentments against me, but I don't respond, I refrain. Tell them I wish them the best, they got some baggage that I ain't the one who could claim. I got some girls from the past who won't leave me alone, even though I'm out the frame. Liking my Instagram posts and sending me messages that really made me insane. I got a girl on my mind, but I'ma be real, I can't do feels, I caught too many and that just is damage. So I keep my thoughts and intentions concealed. I'm trying to keep it 110, cause I know the feelings of what get you killed. I'm trying to live for my people who sleep underneath of a stone with their name in the field. I'm trying to keep it 110, cause I know the feelings of what get you killed. I'm trying to live for my people who sleep underneath of a stone with their name in the field. I'm trying to keep it 110, cause I know the feelings of what get you killed. I'm trying to live for my people who sleep underneath of a stone with their name in the field. Yeah, so by the time I was 27, half of my homies were dead.
Yeah, so thanks for playing that, Natalie. That was a little peek at what it's like, because the problems that I experienced don't always stop when you get sober, but it gives you a new perspective on it. It gives you a new way of seeing it, and it makes it so that no matter where you're coming from, you can understand that there's a solution. And I know for me, my friend has just died, and I'm about to make this huge move up to Vermont to pursue my dreams and, thinking about the people that got left behind. But I found out that, like I said before, every single challenge that I went through was something that I could channel into creative expression. And I want to make something real clear. Not everyone's a pianist. Not everyone's a writer. Not everyone's a composer. Not everyone is something that, can make it artistically. But that doesn't mean that there aren't ways to express yourself through other means. And I was talking to this person from my show, Clean Jams, the other day about the value of trades programs and people making things with their hands and making a mark on the world. And it just goes to show that, whether you're a carpenter, whether you're just someone who's showing up for your family, whether you're someone who's making music, there are so many ways to channel positivity, love, and creativity into the world. And for me, it's music and, it's words, but everything once you get in recovery, or really separate from any substance addiction, once you get ready to confront your truth and put it out to people in whatever form, that's something you can use to make the world better. And I just wanted to say that because there's just so many ways to make a difference. But for me, I got up here And at first we're working on this album, and I'm balancing between, working my service job and, this arts grant that Dr. Joshua Sherman graciously provided me and linked me up with through 1761 Arts. And I'm here at Old Mill Road recording. And, the album is still in its infant phases. And, I'm still dealing with my insecurities. I'm still dealing with, the demons in my head that tell me I'm not good enough. But I channel that into what I'm doing. And in that sense, every single thing that I go through, every single instance of mine not being good enough becomes something that makes me better. And if there's any message that I can leave you with, and I'm going to keep reiterating this, it's that the things that break you down can make you stronger if you're willing to learn from them. And see, I had to go through a bunch of stuff that I never thought I would. I mean, in both ways, I would have told you were crazy if you told me what was going to happen 10 years later and 5 years later at like different stages in my life. Like when I was 14 and I was like taking my first hits off a joint, taking my first sips of liquor in my friend's parents' basement. If you had told me that I was going to be a crack addict with like tattered shoes walking down the street, like I wouldn't have believed you. If you had taught me that like, the consequences were going to leave me there, I would not have believed you. Not one word. I would have thought I can control this. This is just temporary, but it wasn't. But if you had told me when I was, a drug addict who was down at his worst, picking, cigarette butts off the street, picking up pennies for crack, that this was going to happen and that I'd be speaking to people, telling my story. And more than that, more than any of the cash and prizes, I could talk about my radio show, Clean Jams, and the generosity of people in the community willing to give me a platform. I could talk about my column and how grateful I am to be able to tell my story and have people, be willing to listen and learn from it. And the reactions that I've gotten is incredible. I could tell you about how incredible it is to speak with public figures like Dr. Mark Levine and, Erica Marthage, Bennington County's district attorney, and Jim Baker, Vermont's commissioner of corrections, and really have these honest conversations with them. I can't tell you how as a heroin addict that just is so incredible to me. But more than any of that, it's that, quite literally, there are scars that I deal with from my addiction. There are little marks on my arm. And when I had the horrible complexion, there were spots on my face. And, back when I was a busboy, I'm gonna tell y'all a real quick story. And then I'm gonna, do what I do worst and be quiet for a minute and just let y'all bring some questions to the table. But when I was a busboy, there was this moment where it was really hot outside and I was in this dress shirt and it was so hot and I was sweating. And I was brand new at the place and not everyone knew that I was dealing with addictions. I had kind of been half honest about it with the manager, but I didn't want people to see my scars because they were still healing and they were so red and pockmarked and obvious. They were such like an obvious metaphor for my addiction and like all of the stuff that I had been through in the past. And I didn't want people to see, but it got too hot. I dropped some plates because my hands were so sweaty and they shattered all over the floor. And I looked down in it and it was kind of like my ego shattering to the point where I rolled my sleeves up and, it's a super busy day at this restaurant in the city. And I go inside to grab this loaf of bread from the back. And this waitress, really perceptive, looks down, sees this huge, like, recovering track mark on my arm, and she says, "What's that?" And I just froze because all my defenses were gone. I couldn't get high anymore. I couldn't lie anymore. I had no defenses left, chemical or otherwise. And I had to make a decision. And I was scared about it, but the decision that I made is that I decided to be honest and tell the truth. And it's the best decision that I ever made. It was the best decision when I made the decision to tell the truth to myself in the treatment center. When I decided to stay there, it was the best decision when I told the truth at the restaurant and told them that I was a recovering addict. And it was the best decision that I ever made. Every day that I get up and I'm willing to tell the truth about my addiction and I'm willing to tell the truth about how I feel. Because in these times with COVID-19 and isolation and everything going on, it's harder than ever to connect with people. But I find that the essence of connection is truth. And I find that no matter if you're struggling with addiction, mental health issues, if you're self-conscious, if there are people who are like trying to get you down socially or whatever, no matter where you are in life, the principles of the program that I belong to and the principles of acknowledging our truth, cleaning house and working towards, manifesting that truth in our lives through our interactions and what we tell other people and how much we're willing to give of ourselves. I don't know about y'all, but for me, it's brought me to a point where I'm no longer scared when I look in the mirror. And I'm not scared to tell my truth. And the same scared little kid when I was 7 years old and I reached for that Nintendo, 14 reached for that beer, 20 years old reached for that oxy pill is still sitting in front of you. I'm still scared. I'm incredibly anxious while I'm saying this right now, and that's never going to go away. And I'm not going to tell you that that anxiety is going to go away. I'm here to tell you that it's something that you can use and you can channel it into something beautiful and you can learn from it. And you don't ever have to go through what I went through to get the same lessons, which is the truth will set you free as long as you keep moving forward, run towards that truth, and you don't quit before that miracle happens. And that's all I got. I want to do one more song for you, and it's going to be Scars, which is the last track on the album. And it deals with my experience at that restaurant when I had to show my scars, metaphorical and physical. So this is Scars.
I'm scarred and you're scarred, my scars and your scars paint a beautiful picture. It tells the story of the journey of your life, like the writing on a postcard. And if you're scarred inside, trying to come to terms with the past, moving on from a broken heart, I'll be right there with you. I want you to know, listen to my words and you'll never be alone. I'll be right there. I used to hate all of the scars on my face, used to wish for pure perfection with no mark and no trace of any blemish in my image, cause it's hard to relate to other people acting shallow, cruel, heartless and fake. My insecurities got stronger and I started to chase after relief and found a feeling that was hard to replace. It left me permanently marked and weighed so hard to erase. Then I remind me how I hurt myself and tried to escape. It's hard for me to keep it real, but I'ma keep it 100. There's a reason why I wear the long sleeves in the summer. There's a reason why I edit my posts and my pictures to change the way I look with filters, with control and precision. But now I'm walking out the shadows with an honest admission. My complexion isn't perfect in its honest condition, and I got marks up on my body that were caused from addiction. Cause ain't nobody perfect, we all got our flaws and we're different. And there's some people who ain't really got no scars in their skin, but they'll relate to this, cause everyone is scarred from within. And some obsess about their weight until they're awfully thin, preoccupied with what some other people possibly think. And some are scarred from hella trauma they didn't deserve, and so they take out all their hatred and resentment with words, or act indifferent cause they're so afraid to get themselves hurt that any possible attempt at real affection is curved. Rather live an ugly truth than live a beautiful lie, because the truth is that my scars are really stupid to hide. Cause if somebody doesn't see the inner beauty inside, it's cause they're caught up in illusion, so the truth gets denied. Used to always be obsessed by what to do with my scars, but truth be told, my imperfection's my most beautiful part. And I'm just proud that there's a part of me that sets me apart, reminding me how far I've managed to progress from the start. I'm scarred and you're scarred, my scars and your scars paint a beautiful picture. It tells the story of the journey of your life, like the writing on a postcard. And if you're scarred inside, trying to come to terms with the past, moving on from a broken heart, I'll be right there with you. I want you to know, listen to my words and you'll never be alone. I'll be right there.
I'd rather live an ugly truth than a beautiful lie. Thank you so much to Benjamin Lerner for so selflessly and bravely sharing of yourself and your journey this evening. I know that I am changed. Thank you. The Collaborative is so grateful to so many community partners who made this evening possible, especially Old Mill Road Media, among other countless individuals and businesses who have lent their talents to our series of programming this year. If you're interested in finding more about what the Collaborative does, go to our website at thecollaborative.us. But more importantly, please head to Benjamin's website at benjaminlerner.com. And remember to listen to his radio show, Tune In. It is not to be missed, Clean Jams on WEQX Radio at 11 p.m. on Thursdays. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We now have time for questions. So in the interest, because there's so many people with us tonight, if you would like to send me a chat, please go ahead and send me a chat and I will moderate some questions. So yeah, thank you so much. We've got some coming in right now. All right, Benjamin, what would you say to a young person who might be struggling today with mental health, addiction? What would you say to them?
I would say that the help is out there. And the first thing that you can do is know that it's brave to reach out and it's not weak. And that took me a while to understand that the ultimate form of bravery was admitting that there are things that we're afraid of. And I know it's hard to reach out to your parents, reach out to the people around you, reach out to your friends. But it's the best decision you'll ever make. And you don't have to run from that truth. You don't have to hide in a substance. You don't have to hide in your room. I mean, sometimes it's good to get a nap, but you don't have to ever go to substances. And you don't have, in this time where so much isolation, you don't have to be alone. There are resources out there over Zoom in the community and through wonderful things like the collaborative and education programs, and no one has to do this alone.
Nice. We've got a student who is really interested in you freestyling. So
I can do it.
Awesome.
I'm gonna keep it PG-13, but I can do it.
Awesome.
All right. I ain't got a beat, so you're gonna have to forgive me. Look, we all become a product of the things that we consume. A couple years ago, I was broke, addicted, and confused. But one night in a trap house, I started to feel different. Through a thick cloud of smoke, I saw a surreal vision, my future self lying in a body bag, dead in the morgue. That's a sign that I can never ignore. I went to rehab, got clean, stopped chasing the fruitless eye. I traded in my suit for a suit and tie. Then my passion started burning like some unagi, sushi on my tongue covered entirely in green wasabi. And I remember I was listening to Flex, the my song freestyle to be specifically correct. And I understood the power that I had to change the narrative, rapping about addiction and recovery and sharing it. Now I bring the message of the powerful and educated. People used to tell me a junkie like me would never make it. But I ain't in it for the fame or the trife glory. I'm only here to tell the truth and tell my life story. I ain't a rapper, I'm a writer and composer, classical piano player, spitting dope and giving hope for all the people out there suffering, stuck in addiction, to show it's truly possible to overcome your condition. Screaming rest in peace to Lil Peep, rest in peace to Mac 2, rest in peace to Juice WRLD. I do this because I have to. There you go.
That was awesome.
Rest in peace. We got old school hip hop. We in here.
Yeah, that was great. We've got another one from a student. How do we prevent getting into drugs when peer pressure is so strong, when the issue of popularity is so strong, and when stress, especially now during the pandemic, is so strong?
Yeah, I mean, at any time, stress and peer pressure is going to be strong. But what I would say is to discover the things that you really love to do. I mean, and it's not always easy when you're isolated. Like, I know sports is tough, but you know, it's a time to train. And I'm no athlete professionally, but I do push-ups in my room. I do sit-ups. There's like, you know, YouTube videos you can do for that stuff. And no matter what your passion is, even though I can't imagine what it's like being a young person, being cooped up right now. And in addition to not just seeing people that, you know, cabin fever and all that, but there are outside solo pursuits. And if you're a creative person, there are networks, you know, out there. Even if you don't have access to the internet, there are phone groups for people in different, like, you know, support different mental health things. There are like online things that you could do, like for internet cafe. If you got a smartphone, like at a spot, go through it and just connect, you know. Like, there are so many forums in the internet age that if you have, like, you know, like a $10 Nokia Walmart smartphone, you can pull up a YouTube file that'll show you how to make your soccer kick better. If you just got a soccer ball and a post at home, you can do like yoga videos, and I'm just throwing stuff out there. But no matter what your passion is, run towards that, because, like, you know, peer pressure is dope. And like, I understand that it's cool to fit in, but it's better to stand out and it's better to be yourself. And I know that might sound corny, but you know, it really makes a difference to me when I can learn how to do something new and, you know, get a new feeling from that, get a consciousness change from that, because that's something you're not going to be dope sick from. And that's something you're not going to run out of money and have to run somewhere at 2:00 in the morning to keep going. That's something that's free and it's priceless as well. So I would say that to them.
Yeah. Run towards that truth. Head towards
That's
that
right.
truth. That's incredible. That's incredible. Thank you so much, Benjamin. Thank you so much for your time, for your expertise, for sharing your talents, and for showing us our entire community. And thank you all for being here this evening and investing in the youth in our community, and for being difference makers yourselves. We all have a vested interest in making sure that our youth are healthy and are able to make healthy decisions. We really appreciate your time. Please, please, I implore you to head over to his website, listen to Clean Jams, get the album Clean, watch his YouTube videos. It's been an honor and a pleasure to get to know you, Benjamin. And you're just an amazing human being who has made an absolute masterpiece out of a mess. And it's pretty incredible. So I hope you all have enjoyed this evening. I know that I certainly have. Thank you so much for engaging in this journey, this Refuse to Use journey this year. And have a good night.
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you all. Have a good night, everybody.